Hello, my name is Anthony from Learning to Give, and I've been a social studies teacher for 20 years. This presentation, entitled Controversial Conversations, Key Ideas for Teachers and Students, is a distillation of what I've learned from being the creator, facilitator, mediator, and witness to thousands of controversial conversations. And I'd like to begin with a truism that class discussions are essential to student learning. And this assertion has been confirmed by research, which I've included in the slide here. And in order to have a great class discussion, there are some terms that need to be known. Now, I'm going to simplify these so they can be used by as many students as possible. And there are 4 terms that are necessary to know before having a controversial conversation. Number 1, argument. It's a reason or set of reasons given with the aim of persuading others that an action or idea is right or wrong. The second term students need to know is a claim. A claim is simply an assertion of the truth of something. The third term is a cognitive bias. Now, cognitive biases are errors in thinking that influence one's decisions and judgment. These are often in people's minds before the discussion has taken place. And the fourth term is a logic fallacy. Now, a logic fallacy is an error in reasoning that's based on poor or faulty logic. Now, it's similar to a cognitive bias, but these are errors that make the reason and truth that the person's seeking less or totally invalid. So let's break these down a little more. An argument, again, is about reason and persuasion. Now, a reason is a cause, explanation, or justification for an action or event. Persuasion is the act of convincing others to your point of view. Now, I want you to think of the best ways to explain your reasons and persuading to others, whether you're a student or a teacher. Now, how would you like to be treated if somebody else was arguing with you? I would suggest that you act this way, and this skill is essential. Thomas Jefferson quoted, "In a republican nation whose citizens are to be led by reason and persuasion and not by force, the art of reasoning becomes of first importance." And I think Jefferson reinforces how important teaching proper decorum in a controversial conversation is. Now, the second term was a claim. Claim something to be true. Now, when a claim is made, there are 4 ways to test whether it is true or not. These 4 tests apply to all claims. Now, when somebody makes a claim, your first level is intuition. It's your hunch. It's a sense. Does it make sense? It's a gut feeling. That's only going to carry you so far. The second thing you do is you test it to say, should I listen to this person or this source? Is it credible or not? The third level is logic. Does it make logical sense in my mind? And the fourth is evidence. Is it a verifiable piece of evidence to provide the truth of that claim? Now, teaching students to, in their minds, go through these 4 testers is essential in creating reasonable, informed individuals. Now, in terms of cognitive biases and logic fallacies, I am hitting you with the top 10, okay? Now, there are many more than 10, but these are the 10 that I have seen time and time again, and I've attempted to eliminate these. And when a class doesn't engage in these, the controversial conversations go much better. And the first one is a strawman fallacy. When you misrepresent somebody's argument to make it easier to attack, that is not conducive to a controversial conversation. So when you see a student doing it, stop them and explain, this is a misrepresentation, this is a straw man, we don't do this in this class. The second one is an anecdotal fallacy. It's when you use a personal experience or an isolated example instead of a valid argument, especially to dismiss statistics. And young people often say, well, I know one person, or I've seen one person, and this happened to them, therefore it applies to everything else. That's simply not true, and if a student engages in that, you can say this is an anecdotal fallacy. The third one, unfortunately, and this can really ruin a conversation quickly, is when somebody engages in an ad hominem fallacy. This is when you attack your opponent's character or their personal traits in an attempt to undermine the argument. It's very disrespectful. It causes a whole lot of unpleasantness. This has to be stopped from the beginning. If a student is using ad hominem attacks, ad hominem fallacies, they have to be stopped. Now, the appeal to emotion is also very common when you manipulate an emotional response in place of a valid or compelling argument. Getting across to students just because you are more emotional doesn't make your argument any more valid. Now, passion is good and enthusiasm is good, but when it's all emotion and not reason, that's something that we want to lessen and eliminate in our students. Loaded questions. When a student asks a loaded question that has an assumption built into it so it cannot be answered without appearing guilty, this can ruin a conversation. For instance, this little cartoon here, have you stopped cheating on tests? There is no way that question can be answered. And if a student presents a loaded question, say, this is a loaded question. We don't do this in this class. Now, bandwagon bias. Just because it's popular doesn't mean it's right. Now, the likelihood that a person adopts a belief increases based upon how popular the belief is. It's a form of groupthink, and it applies to group behavior, fads, yes men in work meetings, and history. And again, just because it's popular or just because a lot of people feel it to be so doesn't make it so. Confirmation bias. This may be the most common cognitive bias that I've witnessed in the classroom. And it's when people tend to only listen to information that confirms their preconceptions. This applies to politics, religion, education, and general interactions with people on a daily basis. David Hume said, a wise man proportions his beliefs to the evidence. Confirmation bias is the opposite of that. You've already made up your mind, and you're only finding pieces to make up your mind, and it's a very closed-minded way to engage in a conversation. The ostrich effect. By the way, ostriches don't actually put their heads in the sand. That's a myth. However, this occurs when people ignore dangerous or negative information by simply ignoring it. This applies to many aspects of life, but especially in current events, personal challenges, and ideology reinforcement. So ignoring something, that is something that you have to try to break students doing. You have to face something, even if it's unpleasant, and address it from there. Blind spot bias. This bias occurs when individuals fail to see their own cognitive biases. However, those same people are quick to judge and identify the biases and faults of others. This applies to internet debates, group affiliations, and personal interactions. So this cartoon here, you are right and everybody else is an idiot. Too many people get on their computer and do exactly this. This is a blind spot bias and something we want to eliminate in our students. And I want to end with the burden of proof. Saying the burden of proof lies not with the person making the claim, but with somebody else to disprove is simply not true. If an individual makes a claim in a controversial conversation or a debate, the onus is on them to provide the proof, not the other person to provide disproof. This is called the burden of proof. Okay, so to wrap up, I want to reinforce a couple points. Class discussions are essential to student learning, and it's essential that we have students engage in them. It's very positive. We know this anecdotally. We know this through research. Class discussions are wonderful tools in the classroom, but they have to be done correctly. And I feel that if teachers and students really know what a proper argument is, what a claim is, and how to test a claim, and how not to do these cognitive biases and logic fallacies, you are going to have some wonderful, fantastic class discussions that are grounded in respect and learning and knowledge. And I appreciate you watching, and please check out Learning to Give. For this lesson and other free teacher-created and vetted materials, please go to www.learningtogive.org and explore ways that you can infuse philanthropy education into your classroom. You'll be happy that you did.